are your hosts, Mick Meow. How you doing, Mick?
I'm good.
How was your trip?
It was wonderful. It was wonderful. It was a good time at the Reawaken America tour in Florida. I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to be out of a car.
2 days in the car with the cats.
Oh,
It's
my
gotta
Lord.
be gotta be a record of some kind. Hey,
Cat and coffee.
it is. Yeah, lots of coffee. Our show is focusing on topics that impact the hearts and minds and souls of citizens, both locally and nationally, to inform, educate, and activate. Want to go ahead and thank our sponsors, the citysentinel.com and the patriotsentinel.com.
Yes.
If you want news on things that are America, MAGA, Republican, conservative, you need to visit these two sites. Of course, the City Sentinel publishes a monthly newspaper now, right?
Yes.
And then now they opened up another publication in Tulsa.
Tulsa.
Right?
Yep.
And I missed that show. I had to go to the other thing.
Oh.
The other thing.
Oh, the other thing.
We had the other thing.
We had the other thing. Yes.
So we're talking
about
about
the other thing.
We had a convention in Tulsa, the 2023 GOP convention.
Yes.
And I was supposed to be there with you.
Yes.
That night.
Yes.
But we had to go do the other thing.
Can I just say one thing about that? So there was, the other thing, look, I'm just playing. I'm just kidding. But we did have a alternative grassroots gathering. There was over 350 people that came to that. And if you saw the venue that there was, it was cram-packed if you saw the pictures. So that tells me there were a lot of people out there. Number one, they wanted to be like, you and me, we're coming together, we're eating some barbecue, we were having some music, we were having a good time and kind of partying and just kind of coming together, but they wanted that alternative. Whether you want to call them a different faction of the Republican Party, whether you want to call them MAGA, whether you want to call them grassroots, whatever, there is a group of people who are looking to come back to that ordinary, everyday, constitutional loving Republicans who are just out there saying, look, we're tired of where our country is going, and it is time for us to take a stand.
That is a fact here. We have, we had four different factions of the Republican Party, and our guest, Gary Barksdale, he is the newly elected chairman of the Cleveland County GOP, and he'll be on here in a few minutes. But before we get to that, the fifth faction, now they're called MAGA-aligned Republicans.
So who are the four? Because I was like, four.
Well, I would say the religious right.
Okay.
We would say the rhinos or establishment.
Okay.
The libertarians. And the fourth one escapes my mind, but they say there are four. I'm just going to say that there are five because the biggest group that's growing, the MAGA-aligned Republicans.
Especially for 2024, right?
Started in 2020, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, right.
Started even before that.
In 2016.
2016.
And, so we always have this conversation that the Republican Party is always fighting itself. Mm-hmm. And it's fighting itself because we're trying to figure out, when it comes to conservatism, which was, I think, started in the 1960s, limited government, smaller government. And they answered the question of the communist invasion. But do we go back and look at the questions that were answered back in the 1960s and 70s for 2024? So this is the problem we have with the Republican Party, and it's happening everywhere, not just in Oklahoma. Yeah. And we see that so many people with different backgrounds have forgotten one thing, that we can disagree on 10% what it means to be a Republican, and we agree on the 90% to still be on the same side.
And, that is so true. I hear a lot of people talking about, well, if you didn't vote for this people, or you have a picture, God forbid, with somebody, you've aligned with them, and they kind of set themselves apart. But I guess my question is it always a knife fight? Is there always a hill to die on? Or do you need to choose which battlefield to go out and say, The
battlefield is the battlefield of ideas, Mick.
And language.
You're right. instead of fighting each other,
Yeah.
we do have a common enemy, and it's not a person; it's an ideology.
That's it.
And the terminology that I use all the time is the Marxist aligned Democrats.
Yes.
They have taken what was a good party at the time, my grandfather's party. He was what we call a blue dog Democrat. He was a Democrat in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
He believed in fiscal responsibility, conservatism when it comes to money and government. But socially, he goes, hey, we'll throw money to the poor. We'll do this. So those were the times, and I grew up around him in Chicago when my parents were overseas, and I had to listen to him every morning. He would drag me to his buddies at this local diner in Chicago, South Side Chicago, and they would have these conversations, and they would yell and argue about trash and Mayor Daley and all the corruption in Chicago. But
Right.
The show yesterday, I had made a mention that regardless of their conversations and how heated it got, they still went home as Americans because that's what it was all about.
But we used to be able to have a conversation.
We can't.
Used to be able to communicate.
That changed.
Exactly. I used to be able to say to people, you know what? I am for President Donald J. Trump. And I believe in fiscal responsibility. I believe in faith, family, God,
Right.
country. But now people are afraid to say those things. I could say
In our own party.
yes,
in
in
our
our own party.
We have that discussion. Look, we couldn't say and have the discussion with our liberal family members or friends, but having and not having that conversation in our own party
Yes.
is problematic. This is why we have so many different factions, and we can't seem to get to the idea, the one simple core, that we are all Americans.
That's it.
We're all Republicans.
We're all fighting. We're all really going in the same direction. And I listened to a friend of mine one time. We were talking about people being for a bill. It was both the Republicans and the Democrats that were for the same bill,
Right.
but it was different reasons that they were for it. And so they were really kind of meeting in the middle. But then you had the Republicans within the own party who were like, oh, well, if you have an agreement or if you have a meeting in the middle, then you're really aligned with them. Well, wait a minute. I don't understand that. I don't understand why we can't have this situation where we can talk, where we can discuss, where we can build up our party and move in the same direction without saying, dear God, you picture with somebody.
Or the most famous statement I hate to hear, you're not conservative enough. And nobody can tell me what that means.
I'm not woman enough.
What does it mean to be not conservative enough? I mean, a couple of months ago, we had this conversation at a GOP function, and that was kind of brought up, and I kind of got boisterous. I don't know if I told you that story. I said, you know what? If anybody tells me that I'm not that conservative, let's go meet in the parking lot. Let's go back to bare knuckle fist fighting here to settle our differences here, because you know what? If we agree, like Ronald Reagan says, on at least 90% of the platform, then we're still conservatives. We're still Republicans. And I'm talking about Republican on Republican hate.
Yeah.
That's what we have to finish. We have to
get
completely
rid of it.
End it, which is why I liked Harmeet Dillon when she was in Norman about 8 months ago. When she was running for RNC chair, her mission and goal was to go ahead and stop the fighting between ourselves and focus on fighting the real enemy, which is the ideology of the Marxist-aligned Democrats and how they want to destroy this country, which they have. That report that came out yesterday on President Trump, exonerated him. It was a fake. Everything about it was fake.
Yeah.
The only true thing that we know for sure is God, grassroots, the conservative movement, and Donald J. Trump.
But isn't that their modus operandus? They love it. They love it if we're fighting amongst ourselves, because that gives them the upper hand. That gives them the win, because we're so focused on piddling over, one sentence or one, situation.
Parching that one idea you said 2 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. they like it if they can pit us against each other, and that gives them the foothold in. So Gary is here with us, Gary Barksdale.
Good morning, Gary.
Good morning, sir. The new county GOP chairman in Cleveland County. So, Gary, one of the things that I noticed was Cleveland County, great county, loved it, but maybe the Republicans who were there were not listening to the voice of the people. I know that there were several people who wanted to be involved with the party, and it seemed like maybe they weren't able to be involved. But what drove you to run? And what do you see coming out of Cleveland County in the future?
Well, I want to thank you guys for inviting me to this forum right here and to interview me and speak with me about what's going on in Cleveland County. And what you guys are doing with your grassroots mobilization. I do want to commend you guys for having that barbecue gathering on Saturday night at the state convention. I may work at a white collar job, but I'm blue collar to the core. It's like that old Leonard Skinner song. My hair's turning white, my neck's always been red, my collar's still blue. So I kind of fit a little bit better with a barbecue crowd than I do with a tuxedo and a gala crowd. So I really appreciate you guys having that for us. It was a great event, and you're right, there was a lot of people showed up. And I really appreciated that. But
hey, Gary, why don't you go ahead and explain what you do at OU? You're probably one of the few conservatives that teach at OU. Tell the crowd, most of us know who you are, but for the folks that don't know who you are, what is your job at OU?
Well, I appreciate the accolades there. I didn't figure that many people even knew who I was.
They will now. You're welcome.
Well, I've been battling the forces of calculus ignorance at the University of Oklahoma for 35 years, and I am a grateful, God-fearing conservative, and I am happy to be an American. You're right, I am one of the few conservatives. There are a little bit more of us than what you'd expect. A good chunk of them just keep their head low and just take care of business. And they do their job here. They go back home. They take care of their family. They're taking their kids to their football practices and their cheer stuff, and mow their lawns and take care of regular business. And they're just doing their job around here. I also, in addition to being an instructor of mathematics at the university, I also serve as the faculty advisor for the OU College Republican Students Association. I'm also the faculty advisor for the student chapter of Turning Point USA that was formed up here a couple of years back. And that's what I do here at OU. Up until I ran for public office, I was one of those that actually, kind of kept my head low. Did not hesitate to talk in my discussions in class whenever I discuss mathematical models and analyzing data to take a look at certain things like government spending and tax revenues versus tax expenditures. And you can actually justify the discussion of that as long as you link it to the objectives within your class. And so, up until I ran for public office, though, there wasn't a large awareness of my ideology, which I believe that it should be true for teachers. It's not my job to be up there and teach people an ideology. It's my job to get up there and teach kids calculus. So that's what I do at the University of Oklahoma. Now, why you guys asked me here was to discuss what I'm now doing and what my motivation was to run for county chair.
Yeah.
Growing up in Norman, I'm a sixth generation. There are 6 generations of my family that are here in Norman. My family predates statehood right here in Norman on my mom's side of the family. And I have been disgusted about what's been happening here in my hometown. And a lot of folks that are hometown folks here are also disgusted. a result of that, I ran for school board way back in 2013, ran for mayor in 2016, and then ran for school board again in 2022. In each of those races, I did lose. I'm not the best at fundraising, but I still ended up with over a third of the vote whenever I ran for mayor with just $1,700 in a coffer. So it was a pretty substantial showing considering the state of my finances in my campaign. But I was asked by a number of people to run for county chair. And the people that had asked me to run for county chair were people in various camps in the Republican Party here in our hometown. We have experienced a chasm, if you will, between camps here in this town within our Republican Party. You guys addressed a minute ago, the fact that the left celebrates discontent within our party, and there has been, and in spite of the disparities, I've been able to maintain friendships with folks in all the camps, because my focus, y'all, is to take a look at the assets of, I'm going to turn this thing off. I apologize for not turning it off beforehand. Is to take a look at the assets of each and every individual and look at what contributions that they can make to the betterment of our party. For instance, Rarchar and I have had disagreements before, and I still call him a friend. I've had disagreements before with our current mayor, and I still consider him my friend. And I've had disagreements with people in the third camp that are in our county party, and we're still friends. And I want to be able to look at the person, look at what their assets are, and what can they do to bring to the table to improve our party, to improve participation in our party. Right. There are some dynamic folks that we're bringing together right now on our committees that we're forming here in Cleveland County, and these dynamic folks are in all three different camps. Right. And I was happy to see at our executive committee meeting last night that there were folks that were representative of each of those camps last night, and we all left there shaking hands, and we all left there at least congenial with each other.
Hey, Gary, can I butt in real quick? So, last year when you and I spoke about this position, I asked you, remember our conversation that we need someone to bring everyone together. So, last night was a good opportunity to see the three different factions come together. But as chair of the county, what are your plans to bring everyone together and get past all the bitterness? Get past all the anger that we have. You discussed it last night. Can you share some of that with the crowd today?
Oh, I'd love to share it. In fact, I think that that's something that every county chair needs to share with their counties. I am a Bible-believing Catholic Christian, and my faith is what defines me as a human being. I believe that the best way to bring us all together is to bring us together at a table where we can break bread with each other, where we can share scripture with each other, where we can share prayers with each other. It's going to be real difficult for me to look across the table at you after praying with you and after reading scripture with you to look at you and call you a knucklehead because you don't believe in exactly everything I have to believe in my conservatism. It's going to be real difficult to do that. So the best way I can figure to unify folks is under the umbrella of Christ's love. And so as a county chair, we have decided to begin once a month, 10 a.m. Saturday morning, prayer and scripture groups where we gather together as much as we can. And maybe, at a coffee shop or whatever. We haven't determined exactly the first location, and just gather together, read scripture, pray together, and discuss what we can do as men and women of faith, American men and women of faith, and what can we do to bring ourselves together, and so that's one of the things right there. Another thing is to begin to delegate and tap into the talents of individuals that are willing to work with the betterment of the party. I'm not the type of a chairperson to dictate, and I'm going to have my fingers in everything and tell you exactly what you're supposed to do and tell you exactly what you're supposed to do. You have talents. You want to help. You're dynamic. You want to be a contributor to this. I'm going to let you do what that is. I'm going to let those talents shine forth.
Right.
I want to bring that forward in you. I want to do whatever I can to help encourage that growth. And the only way that growth is going to happen is to let folks have some free reign a little bit rather than be a dictatorial monarch, because that's not how we grow. We only grow by enabling folks to become empowered to be who they can and to contribute to the betterment of and the growth of our party. So due to some state rules that had failed at our state convention, we as a county are going to look at forming a committee to establish some rules of ourselves. And some of those rules are going to involve allowing for a transition. And if you guys will both recall, the rule proposal for a transition it failed at the state level. And one of the reasons that it failed was because of the discussion that it would deny counties the opportunity to do that.
Right, right.
But looking at that, we're like, okay, you guys at the state, we at the state said, we don't want to pass this rule because it would be dictatorial to the counties. So now the county's going to say, okay, our county, we're wanting to start some rules so that we can actually have a smoother transition, so that we can actually bring together some of the talents of a previous administration into the current administration and make that transition smoother and make it so that we can actually carry on great ideas instead of having to reform every 2 years. So at the county level, that's what we're wanting to do. Gene Kelly, I don't know, you guys know who Gene Kelly is. The Gene Kelly Show, he's a former Marine and he's a political commentator. He made a comment the other day on the show where he mentioned that we as conservatives have lost the culture war at the national level. But in order for us to take it back, we have got to become hyper local. That means we've got to look at everything that we can to get people back on school boards that are conservative minded, decent parents. We've got to get people back on these city councils that are conservative minded, shoot down these taxes. Good gosh, Norman just had a tax ballot this month. They're trying to do a tax ballot next month. They keep wanting to impose these taxes on us, and we've got to fight this stuff. We've got to form our battalions at the local level, and we've got to fight this locally, and we've got to take things back locally. And that's the only way we're going to be able to advance on the enemy in our culture war, is to do it locally.
Gary, I don't mean to interrupt, but it sounds like you're talking about like what Nathan Dahm and Wayne Hill have been discussing, and even before that, Charity Lynch and Wayne Hill, they were engaged in the brigades, where they were forming groups of people within the GOP, going to the city council meetings, going to the school board meetings, going to whatever meetings are necessary that impacts Cleveland County, bringing that to the GOP. So you could say, we've got a school board member. This is the person that we want to replace with, or we've got an issue coming up in our city council, like the smart cities, the surveillance, all of those, so that you can rally around. It sounds like that's what you're talking about when you're talking about putting these battalions, putting that local action into place.
Yeah, I would love to see more of a state GOP support in communities. I mean, it's kind of sexy and it's fabulous to take a look at what's going on in DC and, Trump and everything. Let's, too often conservatives are focused more on national issues. You got a turnout here in Norman. I mean, and even Norman went to Trump in the election.
Yeah.
Even Norman went to Trump in the
all
election.
77 counties.
Exactly. We went to Trump. We've got outstanding turnout in our generals. We got diddly in our locals.
Yeah.
We had what, Rashar, correct me on this. It was probably a little more than 4,000 folks turned out for that election on that tax increase just the other day.
Yes.
A little over
Uh,
4,000
We're having a hard
folks.
time hearing you.
Yeah.
Can you repeat that question again a little louder?
It was a little over 4,000 voters showed up for a tax increase.
Yeah,
That
so when he's talking about the city of Norman had a hotel motel tax increase last month, and we had a lot of turnout for that. But during the last, how many when you ran for the school board, how many people showed up in your race?
Well, whenever we had our preliminary, we also had the school bond question that was on there, and that brought a lot of folks out that normally wouldn't have shown up for it. But in the general, whenever the Democrat ran against the Republican, that the turnout was about 1,800.
Wow.
Gotcha. So really, that's a small majority, and that's what we're seeing. We're seeing small majorities of people come out to vote. How many people are in Cleveland County?
There's
Good,
well, we
1,800.
got over 120,000 folks
So you got
in Norman
1,800 out of
alone. In Norman alone.
120,000.
Yeah, it's always been low for the turnout, the apathy with the voters, all time high. We got to find a way
Oh,
to
yeah.
overcome that. So, as the county chair, Gary, what's your plan on getting the vote out? What is your plan? These elections in Moore, Norman, and Cleveland County area to get people engaged, to get the vote out, because 2024 primary is right around the corner.
And it's big.
It's a big time here.
We
So
got to sweep it.
the Democrat ground game is a phenomenal system here. What are your plans to get people out, involved, and ultimately the polls?
Yeah.
Well, as I said earlier, we've got some dynamic folks that are eager to serve on our committees. Some dynamic folks, and some of the plans is to, in every area that the Democrats beat us, social media, technology, mobilization, in every area they're beating us at the local level. They have been beating us. They've got a strategic plan to do this form of attack, and they've been doing it for a while. And so we've got we formed some committees last night, and some of the talents of some of these individuals on the committees, and like I said earlier, dynamic folks that are wanting to do work to get us mobilized. So one of the things is to improve our social media presence, to improve our technology, to update our web page. I mean, even a state level, our web design sucks. Okay, I'm just going to put it blunt. It sucks.
It's one step up
so
above
there needs
the
to be
city
some
of Norman's
changes. We need to
webpage.
update. We need to
Gotcha.
update our technological prowess. We need to mobilize our precincts. We've got some, and I hope, like all get out, that we're going to be able to do this. We've got some nice young members in our county that are going to be working on updating our technology and our social media presence. We've got
Gary,
a dynamic
we
local
got a hard stop
we
here.
have a hard break here.
Yeah.
I want to thank Gary Barstow, one of my great friends out of the city of Norman, for appearing on today's show. Gary, we need to have you back so we can finish this conversation. So
there's so much more that we need to cover.
We really
can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
Can I say one more thing really
real quickly?
Real
quickly.
2 seconds.
All right. In Ephesians 6, we're told that we battle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, rulers of darkness of this world. We battle against the wickedness in high places.
Right.
And so we have to keep in mind that we're not fighting against flesh and blood. Rashar mentioned that earlier. We're fighting against something greater than this, and it's evil.
Absolutely. We are fighting against that war. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us today.